You're listening to episode 297 of the Small and Supercharged podcast with Ria Freeman. So today I'm very excited to be joined by Rebecca Honeywell-Ward from Honeywell Bakes, which I'm sure that, if you're lucky enough to have eaten any, you're very lucky indeed. If not, after the podcast, go. But thank you so much for joining us today, Rebecca. It's really, really lovely to speak to you. I'm very excited about this chat.
Thank you very much for having me. It's lovely to be here.
So can you tell us about what you do, about Honeywell Bakes?
Yes, of course. So Honeywell Bakes, I think I'm now starting to question myself, is about 13 or 12 years old this year. It must be 12 years old. And we started, like a lot of businesses do, literally over the kitchen table, with an idea, and started it was my sister and I at that point, and we wanted to send some bakes by post, thought it might be a nice idea to send cakes and all types of things. Quickly realized that biscuits were a great medium. You can have them any shape, any size, and lots of designs on them. So we fixed on biscuits. Later, baking kits came in as well. So now what we sell is hand-iced biscuits that are intricate, beautifully designed, we hope, and taste lovely. And also baking kits so that people can make their own bakes at home. So that could range anything from, one of our very popular kits is a rainbow bagel. So it has everything in there you need to make the rainbow bagels and the recipe card. And all you do is add water, mix the ingredients as directed, and literally end up with these amazing bagels at the end, which are fresh and beautiful and vibrant. So the only other thing to mention really about us is that sustainability has always been really important to us, from the very beginning. 12 years ago, it was a different world. People didn't think plastic was such a bad thing. But still, we were thinking about where the flour came from, etc. And we are now certified a B Corp company. B Corp means that you have to balance people, planet, and profit equally. You are quite rigorously checked before you become a B Corp. It's not the easiest process to go through, but it does give you a stamp at the end to say, actually, you have achieved something. But every 3 years you recertify. You're supposed to improve every 3 years. So it's certainly a journey, not an end. So yeah.
And did you feel, we will go back to the start, but the B Corp thing I think is really interesting, because I'm seeing it used to be incredibly rare, and actually it's still pretty rare to find a company with that B Corp logo, which is great, because it's becoming more and more recognized for what it means.
There's 2,000 now B Corps in the UK. When we certified 2 years ago, there was 1,000. So it's still very small compared to the number of companies, but it is definitely growing.
Why did you think it was important to go down that route? I've got a theory, but as in generally with businesses. But because you were sustainable before. So why did you go down that route?
Well, a couple of reasons. One, it does make you go through an assessment that does make you look more deeply into what you're doing, and it gives you a tool basically to say, oh, okay, are we doing this? Are we doing that? Have we considered this? So essentially it's a set of questions that you then maybe prompts things that you may not have done, even though you do consider yourself to be sustainable. It also asks you a lot about how you treat your employees, about the people that you work with, checks that your supply chain is slavery-free, for example. So it does give you a rigorous test. And also, I think there's an awful lot of greenwashing of companies saying, for example, biodegradable packaging very, very frequently breaks down into microplastics, but sounds good. So biodegradable is a claim people make, but it doesn't really give any positive impact. So we wanted also to say, we've got this certification that shows that someone else has independently checked and verified what we're saying we're doing. So actually, we can't really lie. We can't pretend, not that we did, not that we want to, but it has been checked, and here we are. We can prove it.
That was my theory. Obviously, we haven't spoken about this before, but so it used to be that sustainability was seen as a bit kind of hippie. I'm going to
Yeah.
just go there. It was seen as
Yeah.
a bit hippie. And then I think people started to get more of an awareness, and then it became like a useful selling feature. And as you say, lots of people saying, oh, we make our jumpers with organic cotton. And you think, oh, wow, organic, that's better. But there was that, whether it was or not is a whole different thing. But people were using biodegradable, renewable, and these words obviously triggered that, oh, I'm buying well, I'm making a good choice.
Yeah.
Greenwashing, as you say, but it actually, if you put the effort into kind of just scratch the surface, not even go that deep, they might be doing one thing which is perhaps on the surface beneficial, maybe not if you look into it, but a lot of what they were doing was really, really not.
Yeah.
And it was done as a sort of, it was a marketing tool, but not
Yes.
much else.
Yeah. That's the thing. And there's always, we were discussing yesterday the bags that we're using, and whether they are still the best option, because there's always going to be trade-offs, and there's never going to be, okay, maybe for now, actually, we've decided renewable or recyclable and recycled plastic for our kits is actually a better option than industrial compostable, because lots and lots of people in the country don't have access to recycling things, to composting things in an industrial composter. I didn't realise, because I've always had one, that not everybody has a food waste collection that you can put those things into.
No, we don't.
No, so we've done lots more research on this, and it does seem odd, but we've explained it obviously carefully to our customers and on our consciences. We think that until 2026, when every household is supposed to then have a food caddy, which you can put things like compostable wrappers into, we're going to use recycled plastic that is then more easily recycled at large supermarkets. But there's lots of things like that. It's like, well, what's better? Why is it better? What's the beginning of its life? What's the end of its life? What's the process to get it to that? And like you say, you scratch the surface of some things, and it's not as good as it sounds. So it's got to be really deep. And I think that's what B Corp does really. It forces you as a company to check, and then it does verify that you have gone a step further.
And you've also got the people side, haven't you? Which again, if someone thinks, oh, this packaging's recyclable, you then have to go into actually the way the people are treated at all the different stages in that process of that product as well, which is still a huge sustainability and just, being a good person piece as
Yes.
well.
Yeah, exactly. Well, people is one of the governance, people, workers, and customers are all categories for B Corp as well. So they do check lots of things along the way, exactly like you say, but also how you actually treat your team, because are they being paid fairly? Do they have the correct benefits that they should have? Do they have are they happy at work, essentially? We know no one's happy forever all the time at work, but have they got what they need? Are they comfortable? Can they come and talk to somebody? Are they being paid well? Do they have enough holiday? Obviously, it's all really important.
Completely. No, love all that. But let's go back to the start. So you started on your kitchen table with your sister. What gave you the idea to want to send biscuits by post?
Well, I think at the time Pinterest was new, and it was quite an exciting tool, because obviously you've got going back 12 years, it's so easy to forget now, but we didn't have Instagram was new as well. We didn't have TikTok, we didn't have this information overload that we have now. Now Pinterest came out, and suddenly it's a curated collection of beautiful looking things. It was photo based rather than text based. Other searches were text based, and suddenly there were these beautiful bakes that you could see things people were doing in America, Australia, other places, that we didn't really have in this country. So it started as me thinking, wow, this is amazing. Seeing these dessert tables, which were a new thing, coordinated desserts that were like in a colour scheme that had maybe macarons in the same pink shade as cake pops, etc. And our initial idea was, let's bring that to people who are not bakers, and supply that to them. But like a lot of ideas, it's quite hard to post those things. It's a lot of hard work. There's best before dates to consider. So then it came back round to actually we could do this with biscuits. Biscuits are They have a naturally long shelf life. We can make them with the same or similar base recipes and decorate them accordingly. And that's how we came around to biscuits.
Had you always had a passion for cooking, for baking?
Baking, yes. I've got a really sweet tooth, terribly sweet tooth.
Which is lucky in the job you're in now, because I imagine you have to do a lot of testing. I would make that actually part of
Well,
my
I
job role.
try. Yeah, we have lots of test bakes because we also have baking subscriptions. So every month we've got a bread baker subscription, a young baker subscription for children, and a baker subscription that's more general sweet treats. And so, of course, there's lots of test bakes coming out all the time. What do you think to this bread or this brownie that we've just made that's going to go out in the kit? And we have to try it and say, oh, hang on, a bit more of this, a bit less of that. So we do test quite a lot. Even right now, I've got this test bake on my
Oh
I've been photographing.
that looks incredible. Is it Rocky Road?
It's a refrigerator cake. It's a similar idea to Rocky Road. And things tend to come through to me because I was a photographer before, so I photograph most things. And so it comes to me for testing and photography. So I won't eat all that, but I might have to eat a bit of it. And my mum was a big baker too. So I think I've always baked and been around baking.
You said you were a photographer before. And
Yes.
I mean, obviously, that's a really good transferable skill for so much, especially nowadays. But what made you move from photography to baking?
I was working for myself and I had a business photographing weddings and portraits, and it was very weekend and evening heavy. And when I had my first daughter, my children don't go to school. We actually home educate and they're quite wild and free.
Gosh, but you're a hero. We did home education in COVID, and honestly, you deserve medals.
I think it's different if it's like forced on you. And I must say we're quite free with it. It's certainly not school at home. It's kind of free learning. But I digress a bit. I thought that they would go to school. I'd had my first daughter, and I was thinking, well, I don't actually want her to be at school all week, and then I'll be out evenings and weekends. So I deliberately set the business up as a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, which sounds a bit odd in a way because lots of people try and escape that. But the thought was, I don't want a business that I've got to get up at 3 in the morning to bake bread, for example. I don't want to work evenings. I don't want to work weekends. And we still do that. Our team works within those hours, unless we're very busy.
Sure.
So we've got people that have come from pubs and other places that have had to work evenings, weekends. And we try and keep it within the working day. So that was one of the motivations.
No, I think that's really good. And I think as well, what people listening, and I've obviously been thinking about our chat, sort of forget is that 12 years ago, the landscape was so different for marketing, for products through the post as well. Like now you can get brownies and all sorts posted to you and cake. But when you started, I mean, I can't think of that many brands that would have been around doing baked goods through the post. So were you were quite early on in the whole thing, weren't you?
Reasonably. I think there were a few, and but it's definitely grown a lot, like you say. And I think everything's grown by post, hasn't it, really? Especially COVID, then even more so because people couldn't go anywhere and get things. We started selling on Nottingham High Street, which had a lovely market already. So that helped us because when we joined them, they already had a big market. And obviously setting up as an individual, it takes a long time. And we didn't have a big budget. We spent £100 on our website. And I think our total budget for the whole startup was £1,000 between us. And that was it. We didn't have marketing budget. So by joining a marketplace, helped us get things off the ground. And I think so by the second Christmas, we were selling in Selfridges, and they found us through the marketplace as well. So I think that helps for people setting up a business. Unfortunately, right now there isn't such a good marketplace out there for small businesses, but there is Holly and Co, which is new, and things are coming. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, so when you have £1,000 to start a whole business, how do you allocate that money? Obviously, you had to get a website because you're by
Yeah.
post remote. How did you market yourself? Because although you were on the marketplace, I imagine you still had to do other things to help raise awareness of your brand, get your brand sorted, and go down that route.
We did, but I think we also quite enjoyed having lunch out, and I ride. So I used to go down to my horse in the morning. I didn't want it to be too busy too quick. I already had a small child. I was in the lucky position, I was essentially on maternity leave, although I didn't have a job to go from. So you know, it was very organic. It was quite slow, really. And if I'm honest, it wasn't a huge rush. And I think we just slowly gained momentum. So we were then in Selfridges under our own brand. And things just kind of snowballed. We did have Instagram and Facebook. I think Facebook was more predominant at that time. And we did post on there, but with no real strategy. I think just, it was genuinely quite organic, quite slow, and it just kind of started to snowball. I think what people sometimes think now, with all the social media and everything we see, is that businesses are quick, and they're really not. I don't think there's very, very few businesses that are quick to get going, quick to be successful. And I think unless you do have a very large budget and you really hit things running, and I'm like hundreds of thousands of pounds to put into marketing, I don't think it happens that quickly. I think you kind of got to go, and we did things like for the local ladies in the village. We had an event where we showed them all our stuff, and they bought a few things, and it was just kind of very, very slow.
But do you think that's quite a good thing? Do you think nowadays people see and think they're going to go from zero to, Bugattis overnight, but they don't have I think there's a lot in the growth process that you learn, the trying and the testing.
Yeah, there is an awful lot. I remember when Selfridges first contacted us, and we had some conversations with them, and then they said they'd raise a PO, and I had to go and Google, what are they doing? I don't know what a PO is. Of course, I didn't say that. I said, okay, great, we'll look forward to it. What's a PO? I don't know. And then I didn't know about the delivery. Companies like that expect you to fund the delivery, etc. I didn't know any of that. We had to just slowly kind of learn these things. And like you say, if it's too quick, you can trip up. You can trip up. And I was also having other children. I've got 3 now, so I kind of went on to have 2 more children in the next couple of years. And at one point I was kind of feeding the baby, put the baby down, ice some biscuits, pick the baby, all of that. And so you also don't have a massive amount of spare time for rushing and putting extra things in.
No, I no, completely. But I do think that this desire almost for this get rich quick overnight success, it removes so many of the essentials. And I don't know many people who started out day one with a product or service and haven't evolved it over time.
Yeah.
And then people can get really despondent when their first thing doesn't turn into their multi-million-pound success. And when you look at anyone, it just doesn't. You start with your first thing, and then you said you were looking at things to put in the post, and you went down a different route, and you found it was a nightmare. But if you'd stopped at that point, going, well, that I haven't got rich quick, then you wouldn't have developed what you have now.
I think there's a lot to be said for perseverance. Yes, I think things go up and they go down. And another lesson learned for us is that during COVID, we actually really took off, really, more than we were already at a stage where we had 12 people. By the end of COVID, we doubled our staff and doubled our turnover. But it's dipped again. And the thing is, we think, oh, we've made it now. Look at us, everything's on the up. We've grown year on year massively. But that's not how business goes. It is a roller coaster. And I think, again, you could go down again, things are difficult, and just think, oh, that's it, I'm giving up at this point. But it's a long road and a long haul. And I think there's a lot to be said about just resilience, perseverance, and you've constantly got to pivot and change and think about what the world's doing, what people need. And obviously we've just been through a really difficult period, and we're still in it in many ways, although prices are coming back down. But yeah, I think it's about sticking it out.
And I think COVID, I mean, obviously that was just a whole nightmare of a situation. But lots of people started small businesses at that time. Lots of people started side hustles, and lots of people were spending money online. So
Yeah,
I've spoken to a number of different people, and they saw a massive spike in all the good things during COVID. But of course, it has dropped afterwards, and then they can get these feelings of, oh my God, I'm failing. Oh, and if you can kind of plot their growth on a graph, but take out COVID, they're actually perfectly on track. But because you've got
yes,
this crazy period in the middle, it can
yeah,
make people feel really deflated. And
I
I think
think
that's
so.
sad.
And I think also after COVID, so COVID was obviously very difficult, and lots of businesses, it was very difficult, but some online businesses, who were in the right place at the right time, people had spare money, they wanted to connect with other people, they weren't going anywhere, prices for electric, etc., were still quite reasonable. And if people were happy and healthy at home, they had spare cash and nowhere to go. So I think that did go into a lot of small and larger postal businesses. But like you say, we then came out of that into war, into huge hikes in all prices across everything. Mortgage prices, everything went up. People had a lot less cash. They were suddenly expected to go back to work and spend money on petrol and everything else. And of course, they didn't have spare money anymore. In fact, they had less than spare money, and they were really struggling. But for us, our flour prices in the last year or so have gone up 5 or 6 times, significant amounts each time. But you can't pass it on. So of course, margins get squeezed for businesses, because the customers don't have money to spend an extra 30% on their products. And yet all the prices of everything's gone up. So it's definitely been a tougher time for people. I can imagine if you start in COVID and everything spikes, and then suddenly your prices spike, but your orders dip. It is disheartening, but it will come again. It's cyclical.
No, completely. So you started off with your sister, you made the biscuits, they went on to not on the high street, and then you got into Selfridges. What happened next?
It was a reasonably um, it was a reasonably slow process of growth. So we did keep growing. We got into Selfridges, and then that is again a double-edged sword. Selfridges and all of those places obviously sound great on your CV, but of course they want the world for nothing. They don't want to pay delivery. They want you to do all the designs for free. They want your prices to be less than half of what they sell them. And there it's a double-edged sword. So we got to one point when they said, okay, we'd made all these biscuits for them, and they said to us, we want them on sale or return. And we said, well, we can't do that because we can't have them back at the end of the period. It was Valentine's. After Valentine's Day, what are we going to do with them? And they said, sorry, we want them on sale or return. So I said, then we can't do it. We pulled them out of there, and they were in big tins for them. And instead put them into small boxes of 3, and put them on our own website and marketplaces, and sold them for 3 times what we would have sold them in Selfridges, and sold them all. So that was a bit of we thought, well, it's a real shame we're not working with Selfridges, but it's better for us.
Was it
So
quite
sometimes
scary saying actually no?
it wasn't, because in some ways you think, well, actually, I think I have a bit of a thing about being taken advantage of, and I just thought, I'm not doing it. It's really unfair, and they have no pressure to sell them. They have no, and they're a massive company. They could afford to sell, to lose some, or to sell some less, because they're still getting them half, 50% off RRP. So I'm not willing to take that risk myself. I'm literally icing them in between breastfeeding or whatever it is you're doing with a baby. And I'm putting my life into this, and I'm not doing it for that much of a risk. So I just said no.
And did that kind of experience influence the way that you run your business now and how it's grown and evolved over time?
I think so. One of our main policies, or one of our main values, is that we treat people fairly, but that we expect to be treated fairly in return. So if we think something isn't fair, we're not going to go into that partnership or do that. And I think we try to do the same for people we buy from or people we employ or anything. So yeah, I think it has an impact, and hopefully a positive one.
So you obviously at this point, how many people are working with you?
18.
18 now. How many when you were kind of starting? When did you start taking on people?
So it was just Rosie and I at the beginning, and then Rosie left 4 or 5 years in, I think from memory, or it could have been up to 6 years. She wanted to go and move up to the Isle of Harris, up to Scotland, and she had some other plans, and obviously we couldn't make it work with her not being around. So it was when I went on maternity leave with my son, who's my third baby, which was around, he's 7.5, so it must have been around 8 years ago. We took on a premises then, because we're at the point where every room and everything was full of boxes and biscuits, and the oven was constantly full. So we took on a premises, and obviously I stepped back and I couldn't ice or make the biscuits. So we took on my sister as maternity leave cover, another sister. I'm the eldest of 7 children.
Of 7?
Yes, so we've had, at one point or another, we've had everyone coming in. I took on my sister and then somebody else, and then my other sister left as well, and the other lady is here still. She's come and gone, but she's here at the moment. She's our product developer, Deanne. She's our product developer for the baking kits and subscriptions. And then just slowly after that, we needed more people, and we've grown from that.
Were there any times on your journey where you kind of thought, oh God, we've made it? Did any things happen that you thought, actually, we are winning this, we are just doing so well, and this is great?
Yes, there are. Still, for me, when I was younger, I used to love the country living Christmas editions, because I've always been a country person at heart. I've always wanted a big country house, and you know, that kind of idea of it all being lovely and dogs around and chickens, and maybe growing my own veg and things. And we were in the Christmas special of country living. I can't remember the year. I don't know if it was 2018 perhaps. And we were one of the featured, they have 2 featured businesses, and we were one of the featured businesses. Wow. In the country living edition. I had them saved for about 10 years, the Christmas country livings, and then this one we were in as a feature with 4 or 5 pages. So that was for me, we've made it moment. Of course, very little came of it, but it was more the thought of being in it that was good.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, on the flip side, have there been things along your journey where you've thought, this is just hard, I could do anything apart from this, it'd be easier?
Absolutely. I think the past couple of years I've questioned very much what we're doing. Like I've said to you, all our prices from our costs have gone up. Our electric price went from 14 pence a unit to 57, and every single supplier we use has upped their prices because they've needed to, but many times. And we were in a position when what was coming in and what was going out was very unbalanced, and we had to take a loan to get through it. And it felt, that was a couple of years ago, and it feels like we're coming out, but it's been a tough couple of years after the high of being very, very busy during 2020 to 2021, and then we had to reduce the hours of some people, which meant a few people had to leave. Really hard to do those kind of things, but it's one of the, I think it is, it's ups, it's downs, and that's what it is.
No, absolutely. I mean, in addition to the biscuits and the baking kits, you also do bespoke business creations. I was looking at those earlier. I mean, have any of those been particularly like, wow, I can't believe we're doing this?
Um, yeah, there's quite a few actually. When you start out and you think nobody knows of you, and then we've worked with lots of really good, well-known brands who I have always loved. So I've always liked the Lonely Planet, for example. It's just because to me, when I was a teenager and starting going traveling, it had this lovely allure. And we've done quite a bit of work for them. And then Miffy, we have a collaboration with, and I loved Miffy as a child. But then even now, I think behind me here, I've got doing some things for Ghostbusters.
Oh, they're cute.
So I think lots of well-known, iconic brands and characters are that, yeah, they're always exciting to do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking now. You've got, they're all gorgeous, but the one that did make me smile was the Who Gives the Crap one, because I think that's such a
Oh
cool
yeah,
brand.
they are a good brand.
Such a cool brand, and I mean, they're all lovely, and it instantly recognizable even before you like read what they say. You know, like Trustpilot, it's that font. It's very,
Yeah.
very cool. What's your favorite product that you make? Which it might be like picking your favorite child, which I don't know if you're anything like me, but some days that is actually not a hard question.
It's easy, some days it's not. And my children do ask me, who's your favorite? And I'm like, none of you are my favorite, you know that. And they tease each other. Well, I obviously am. That is a good question, and it does change. But we do have this beautiful set at the moment that's is currently one of our best sellers, which is a couple celebration set, and it can be for weddings, anniversaries, that kind of thing, and it's just biscuits with initials on and just pretty florals, and it looks really nice. It was good to photograph. And then my other favorite is the bread subscription, because I think I'm quite into baking bread. Oddly enough, I got into sourdough during COVID, which everybody did, but I'd just done a sourdough course or before it took off, so I was well placed. So our bread subscription, we have some really lovely, unusual breads. It's not just loaves of bread each month, so you don't just make a white loaf. You make something like a pain au chocolat or a sesame and miso terrapart bread.
Oh wow.
All that kind of, and our bread person, the developer, is Kaylee, and she just comes up with these lovely breads, and obviously we get to try them all. And it's just amazing what you can do with a lump of dough and yeast, and then it can look a bit unassuming, a ball of kind of this white dough, and then of course it turns into this lovely bread at the end, and it's satisfying, and I think people learn a lot from that subscription.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the subscriptions are really cool, and the fact that I think the kits are great as well. Like I was having a look at a few of them before we started, and I thought my kids would love that, as they like baking, but it's kind of like, oh God, what have we got in the cupboards? And
Yes.
you know, I also have like the basics for biscuits, but you know, you can't decorate anything pretty because we don't have any food coloring
Yeah.
but they're you know, a kind of rainy day activity. Absolute bargain. They'd be so thrilled with what they'd done, and they'd created something, and you don't have to overthink it as a parent. I think like the mental load of trying to be like fun mum all the time, even
Yeah,
just
what
some
do
of
we
the time.
make, and have we got any glacé cherries? Or yeah, and it does make it simpler, because I have some kits at home, and then the kids it's all in there, it's all weighed, and so I'm like, yeah, you can do it on your own now, because you're getting a bit
Yeah.
older. So
Amazing.
yeah, they are quite, it does make it easier, because when we bake from a kit, I'm like, oh, actually it's so much less mass and less everything, so it is easier.
And the outcome is, we've got here like the love bug biscuits, or the dinosaur fossil one. I mean, I'm going to look at how I'm going to look into this in with a lot of effort, but like I don't have the things to make the imprints. Obviously you do if you get the kit, but do you know what I mean? It's just quite cool that it's all there without having to kind of traipse around, because sometimes some of these things, you look at a recipe online and you think, right, I need to buy this much of this, and you're going to use like none of it, and it's
That's the thing.
really expensive by the end
Doesn't
of
end up cheaper. No, it doesn't. By the time you've had to buy 6 food colorings, and also the ones that you buy, because we're buying in bulk, and obviously we've practiced and we've got experience, the colors that we use, for example, in the rainbow bagels, are genuinely going to give you those colors. Whereas you go to the supermarket and you buy a pink and it turns out a muddy brown, and when you bake it, it's gone. So it's kind of genuine that these should work. If you follow the instructions, they do genuinely look like the picture.
No, definitely. Ages ago, I made a red velvet cake, and when it came out the oven, it looked like a liver. It was awful. I mean, it was tasted all right, but
Red velvet cakes are a funny one. Yeah, I don't understand them completely because it's basically a red chocolate cake.
the colour, something weird happened, and I was like, oh my God, we've got to eat that. So it was, yeah,
Close your eyes.
edible, but not amazing. So yeah, and I think it's quite cool. So what, I mean, how did you diversify into the kits, into the subscriptions? Because obviously making the biscuits is one part of it, but was there a need? Did you just thought we'd give it a go? How did that work? Because you've broadened that market for who you're working with as well.
Absolutely. It was actually somebody else, another seller not on the high street, was selling their business, and they sold kits and subscriptions. So it was a ready-made business. It was quite different to how we do it. It was aimed quite at teens, and it was quite cheap and cheerful. So we took it on and changed the model a bit and made it. So we use organic flour and a lot of organic ingredients, for example, and they're a little bit more, I think sophisticated would be fair to say. It's a little bit more unusual because a lot of the bakes were things like just a reasonably plain cupcake. And actually, we've tried to elevate it a little bit more in line with the other things that we do. But it was a fantastic opportunity, and it wouldn't have happened, I don't think, unless that business had come up for sale. And essentially, we bought that and over a couple of years and made it part of our brand, so that it's now seamless, hopefully.
I think that's a really good point as well. Sometimes when people add more stuff to their core offering, obviously you bought another business, but it has to align with the values. Otherwise, it erodes the other
Yeah.
part of your brand and your reputation, doesn't it?
Yeah, so it was important to us that that it looked and felt and was aligned, exactly. So we're just as careful with the ingredients, with the packaging. It's all just part of our brand, and it's not something that's separate at all. And so we'd eliminate certain things that felt weren't aligned with our brand values. And I mean, it's been a long time now. It's 2018, so it's very much now part of us and doesn't feel separate. But at first it had a separate website and separate customers. But we are now all one thing.
Thinking about small businesses in general, obviously it is really tough at the moment. And I think that people that aren't saying it is, I don't know what they're doing, but perhaps not fully telling the truth all the time. What advice would you give to people, whether they're at the start of their business journey, whether they're finding it really tough? What would you say to them? What's your kind of top tips?
I think it goes back to perseverance and resilience, and not everything works every time. I mean, we are reasonably established, but by no means big. We're still very, very small as a business, but we'll put something out there that we're convinced is going to sell and be a bestseller, and it'll flop. And we still don't know. I think you've got to try things and not be disappointed when it doesn't all go how you think it's going to go. Because like I say, we'll think, I'll be behind a product. Oh, this is gonna fly. This one, everyone's gonna buy this one. It's gonna be the new product that everyone wants. And we had one of those released at Christmas, and it's now in our end of season sale, and we're discontinuing it, and it just hasn't sold. It hasn't caught people's imagination for whatever reason. They don't like it. So you don't always get it right. And I think you just got to persevere, try something different. Or if you are convinced that is the product, maybe you haven't hit the right market, maybe it's the wrong time. And I think keep at it if you're convinced.
But that awareness as well, don't you think? The awareness to go that isn't working, or why isn't that working? I think sometimes we can take these kind of things that happen as like a personal criticism. And then you almost have that sunk cost fallacy. Well, I've put this much time into it, and my ego's not going to like it if I give up. But from a business point of view, you have to be quite subjective about it.
You have to try, and it's difficult. And there's things that I've held on to because I have a story or I like it, that I should have got rid of. I think also there's sometimes we've had a product that's limped along for a while and then it's had its time. So I think if you really do believe in it, I think there is some merit in holding on. But also, like you say, there's a lot of merit in letting go and maybe trying it again and bring it back, changing things, changing the photography even, and bring it back in another few months or another year.
Sure. Now, last one I'm going to ask you about is about social media, because obviously you're a photographer, so you're all about the visuals and your website is beautiful. Like the photography is absolutely gorgeous. What kind of impact has social media had on your business? And what advice would you give people who are, who are using it to market their business too?
It's a love-hate relationship, I think, with social media, and I very much go in cycles. I've always liked Instagram as a very visual platform. I'm a photographer and I like stills. I like to see a beautifully executed photo. And I don't want to watch videos all day. But I am not one of the majority anymore. And everything has gone to video, which takes longer to produce, longer to edit, and longer to watch. And to be honest, I don't like it. I'd much rather take a beautiful photo and have that go up and do the job. But you have to play the game. And in all honesty, we've got a reasonable Instagram following, but pretty crap engagement at the moment. A couple of years ago, we could just post photos sporadically when we fancied it. This one's good, let's put that up, tell a little bit story about this. And they would all just do really well and didn't have to worry about it. And it's now something that we have to strategize over, think over, plan, put things out there. And sometimes all for like 20 likes.
Mm.
I know it's not all about the likes.
It's disheartening though.
It is disheartening. And I've gone in stages when I've just thought, oh, bugger it, let's not bother. Some companies have completely, like Lush, for example, has famously said, we're not doing it. We're not playing the game. We're not giving Mark Zuckerberg any more money or any more time. And but that's a bold move and they're a big company.
That's bold. Yeah, it is bold.
Yeah. So we play the game. And with varying success, I think it's important, but probably what's more important is to be considering your direct marketing, email marketing, making sure that you have that can't be taken away. We know with Instagram, they could change their algorithm, they could shut your account down. Something could happen that means that you're not seen by anybody ever again. So I think you've got to be careful and not rely on any one thing too much. And we have just started posting on TikTok again, but again, we basically put there what we put on Instagram, and there is a market there. There are people, my children like TikTok. They are still young, too young for it really, but I think the next generation will be on TikTok. And so it'd be foolish not to consider it at all. And I think there's merit in all of them, but you can't do everything all the time.
No. And I think what you said about the mailing list is so important. It terrifies me when people's entire business is built on, any social media platform. And that's literally it. Please always send me a DM and I'll send you the PayPal details. I'm like, but what if your account gets hacked? What if you...
And it happens to big accounts. It does genuinely happen.
It does.
To big people. The big hotels lost all of their social media, and they're a very big, well-known, well-established brand. And a year or two ago, it was wiped.
I had the English stamp company on a few years ago after they had their account hacked. Awful. Absolutely awful. And
that's not to rely, like you say, you can't rely too heavily on anything, because 2 years ago, if I'd have put a picture up tonight, it would have got a couple of thousand likes, and if I put it up now, it will honestly get 50 at a push. And it's just not getting the reach, it's not getting seen. And I think things change so easily that you've got to be not going to chase that too much and establish yourself elsewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think it's a really important lesson, and like not putting all your eggs in one basket, particularly one that you don't own, is
Yeah,
it's quite a biggie, really.
exactly. Yeah. Well, I'd say the same about marketplaces because we we sold on not on the high street. We still do. And there's another wonderful platform, Holly and Co. And I don't know if you've heard about them, but hopefully they will be everywhere very soon because it is everything's beautiful on there, handmade, just beautiful, beautiful products. And Holly herself has all the right ideas and her heart in the right place. And did run not on the high street. But not on the high street for us was a very big part for a very long time of our income. And for various reasons, over the past 2 to 3 years has hugely dropped off, not just for us, for everyone on there. And again, we don't own it. We have no say over their marketing, over what they're doing, their branding, anything. And I've got friends who sold on there as well and relied solely on that, didn't have a website, didn't have another avenue, and were riding high, so it didn't matter. But now have crashed completely and having to start again. So one thing we did always do was have a website, build it up, look to advertise it, and make sure that we were aiming to get customers on that website. And I think it's so important that you're not having, like you say, everything in one place, whether that's a wholesale account or a marketplace or an Instagram account, whatever it is, you've got to have other avenues.
And the time to build that is when it's going well, isn't it? It's not that panic, oh my God, I need to do something quickly. It's good to put those foundations in before you need them because it's really gone wrong.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's too late by the time it's gone wrong. And yeah, we've not on the high street genuinely was 50% of our income, and it's now probably about 5 to 10%. And it really, really dropped, and it is going down still. And if we'd have relied on that and thought, well, this is great, we're making, loads of money on here, we would be in real trouble now if we hadn't had if we didn't have other options.
No, completely. So what can we expect from the future? Before I ask you all the places, I know I said that was the last question, but then, just chucked one in there about what can we look out for on your social media accounts? What's going to be coming soon?
Well, we do have an exciting project I'm not supposed to tell anyone about yet, but we're working on lots of bakes, and lots of things that will come out in the autumn. So that's one thing. And I think what I hope we're doing is still here in 10 years, still looking on Pinterest for ideas, but like we did at the very beginning, still developing lots of lovely new things. Who knows what is going to be then? But I always hope to be excited by that and the development, and that we're still putting things out there that people are still surprised and excited by. That's where I hope to be.
Oh, brilliant. It's been so lovely to talk to you. Can you tell us all the places where we can find you online?
Absolutely. Well, our main one, of course, is our website, which is honeywellbakes.com. We are also on Instagram at Honeywell Bakes, Facebook at Honeywell Bakes, TikTok sometimes at Honeywell Bakes. We do have a shop, My Bakes, not on the high street. We have a lovely shop on Holly and Co, Honeywell Bakes. And we do also sell in a few other places. You'll find us in Dalesford Farm Shop, for example.
Love Dalesford. Such a cool place.
It's a lovely place. And some other places like that. We English heritage venues, for example. So we have wholesale accounts in places like that.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been brilliant, and I'm positively salivating now. So it's always a good way to
send you a kit. If you let me know which one your children would like, we'll send you one.
Oh, that would make their day. I would be fun mum for a short period of time.
Hopefully a bit less mess than there always is with baking.
Isn't there though? I mean, you've got 3 of them. I've only got 2, but it looks like there's been a monkey loose in my kitchen, just throwing flour around.
Flour and sugar. Yeah.
You think, what is happening
on the floor? Yes, We've had it all, yeah.
The dog's covered in it, the kids are covered in it, the kitchen's covered in it. The only thing that isn't is the bowl waiting for the
Yes,
stuff.
place that it should be.
Thank you so much for joining me. It's been brilliant to chat.
You're welcome. And you, really nice to talk to you.